Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's now 3:00 p.m. on a Thursday, April 27, 2023. I'd like to welcome you all to Richland County Council's budget work session. This afternoon, we're going to be covering, I believe, grant funds, special revenue funds, as well as capital projects. So at this time, this meeting will come to order. Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Branham,
President.
Pugh, McBride,
Present.
Livingston, Teratio,
Here.
Weaver,
Here.
Barron,
Here.
Walker,
Present.
Mackey,
Here.
English, Newton.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. It's also been brought to my attention that a few of our colleagues will be attending virtually this afternoon. I believe that would be Councilwoman English, Councilman Livingston, as well as Councilwoman Barron. Next item on the agenda is item 2, adoption of the agenda. Any changes, additions, or deletions? Mr. Brown?
No requested changes, sir.
Okay, at this time, I entertain a motion.
So move, Mr. Chair. Second.
It's been moved to properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Branham,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English, Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda, item 3, grant funds. Mr. Brown, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of council. Much to your delight, you do get to hear somebody else's voice today. As we are dealing with the budget, we do have a budget director, Mr. Abi Deshpande, who's going to walk you through these particular sections. So I'll reserve my voice for another day. So, Mr. Chair, if you are recognized, Mr. Deshpande, we'll move forward with the budget work session.
Sponde, you are recognized.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of council. Abi Deshpande, Budget Director. So today we'll talk about the grants, special revenue, and the capital improvement plan recommendations. In terms of the agenda, we'll go through the overview of the grant application, timeline, and the process. We'll talk about the community impact grant program recommendations or the current state of that program. We'll talk about the accommodation tax program, hospitality tax funds, the general fund grant requests, and then as well as neighborhood improvement grant program, conservation commission grant program. Then we'll talk about the county's external grant request, as well as special revenue funds and the capital improvement plan. And please feel free to stop me whenever you have a question about any particular slide or the information that is presented to you.
Ms. Newton is ready.
Thank you. Just for wayfinding purposes, I have many documents in addition to whatever slides you are going to show. So where should I direct my attention in terms of the materials that I physically have?
Yeah, so in terms of the slides would be the primary document for this presentation, but as well as if you want to get the deep dive in that particular section, I have pointed out the numbers in the budget book that you can go to that particular section to get the deep dive.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So in terms of the overview of the grant application, the timeline and the process. So as you know that we have hospitality tax program and the accommodation tax program, which is basically the main, the two key grant programs, as well as we have the community impact grant program, but that program has been still under in terms of the setting the structure and the guidelines is still work in the progress by the council. So right now, what I'm going to talk about is basically the accommodation tax program as well as the hospitality tax program and the process and timeline of that. The key theme behind next two slides is really about how the grant office or the budget office has given tremendous amount of focus in terms of the transparency, providing as much as information to the community organizations and the public, as well as bringing more standardized process within the grant program, and as well as the giving the information to all the community, the HTAX and ATAX committee who evaluate all the grant applications. So the pre-application, the process started November 2022, where actually there were several public announcements were done with the help of the county's public information office and their team. Several email blasts were done through the comprehensive listserv to all previous applicants and awardees through print and social media announcement via, again, the county's PIO office, as well as there was announcement on the budget department's website about the both HTAX and ATAX program. In addition to that, we also had 2 in-person grant workshops on November 28 and 23, November 28th and 30th, 2022, in terms of providing information to all the interested organizations who are interested in terms of applying about the application process, requirements, and nitty-gritty of that particular programs. In that total 2 sessions, we had around 17 organizations and 19 people attended that. During the application period opened on December 5th and closed on February 5th, 2023. It was only online application process via Zoom grant software, and it was made. It was stressed upon on all the in-person training sessions, as well as all the announcement that only online applications will be accepted. Again, during that application period, emails were sent out to all through the listserv about all upcoming deadlines. In total, we received 51 HTAX applications and around 20 ATAX applications during the application period. Post-application, all current HTAX and ATAX committee members were contacted several times to inform about their process or how can they review the application process or application submitted by the organizations. All of the members had the access to the Zoom grant software. Total 5 out of 5 HTAX committee members participated during the review application process, and 3 out of 7 ATAX committee members, they participated in the application review process. As well as all applicants were asked to register for in-person presentation opportunity, where we held like 2-day separate ATAX and HTAX presentations for each organization, where each organization had around 5 to 7 minutes to present their grant program to the committee members. ATAX presentations were held on March 15 to 2023, and total 13 organizations they presented. On March 16th, we had HTAX presentations at around 40 organizations they presented about their grant program to the committee members. Moving forward to the Community Impact Grant Program, as you know that the structure of the program is being finalized by the Community Impact Grant Committee. The tentative timeline is that the application process will open on July 1st, 2023 for the fiscal year 24. And the grant funding decisions will be made by September 15th, and the grants period will start on October 1st, 2023. I want to stress that there were many inquiries about the Community Impact Grant Program, so we have not accepted any kind of applications for this program yet. So as it will start once the structure of the program is finalized by the committee and the council. And the only thing that I would like to stress upon here is the total allocations what council already have approved for FY24 through this Community Impact Grant Program is 1 mil value of the last fiscal year, which is the fiscal year 23, and that mil value is $1.78 million that is allocated in the through the general fund for this program. So moving forward to the accommodation tax funds, what this slides shows is that about the revenue of this projected revenue for the accommodation tax grants. As you can see that, as we're coming out of the pandemic and compared to last 2 years of the economic growth, definitely we are projecting that this year will collect a higher tax compared to the last 2 years. This year, the projected accommodation tax collection is around $600,000 compared to what it was $400,000 in the past. So altogether, their budgeted allocations for accommodation tax fund is $741,000 and some change there. And basically, this slide.
Stop.
Yes,
Ms.
go ahead.
Deshpande.
All right, can you go
Ms.
back
Mackey.
to the previous slide? Can you just explain the use of fund balance?
So basically, so they have the fund balance, which is around right now, as per the last year's act, for around 400,000 sitting in their fund balance. So which was not used in the past, just because of some of the conservative estimates, or wanted to make sure that the economic recovery is on the track. So right now, based on the actual tax collection, we feel that they can use their current fund balance, some part of that, and can do some grant making out of their fund balance also. Hence, the actual tax collection will be around 600,000, and the fund balance, they will be still using that amount.
Thank you.
Ms. Mackey, continue on, Mr.
Sure.
Des-
So the next 2 slides is basically all the recommendations received from the Accommodation Tax Committee about all the applications they received and they reviewed, and their recommendation amount for these organizations' funding. So as you can see on the FY24, total requested amount was around 1.5 million, and about half of that we were able to, or the committee were able to recommend that. Any questions on these 2 slides?
Questions from the body? I think not. Continue. Well,
I'm sorry,
Councilman
Mr.
Weaver,
Chairman.
you recognize.
The fiscal year 24 recommended, I guess that's recommended by staff, or?
By the accommodation tax committee, the staff.
the
These are
committee.
not. The staff doesn't get involved into any kind of recommendations.
Okay.
Yes.
A wise move on the staff's part, I would say, yes,
Yeah, sure.
definitely. Thank you.
Mr. Weaver?
So moving forward to the hospitality tax funds, kind of the similar story that you saw in the accommodation tax, definitely higher tax collection that we are projecting as we're coming back out of the pandemic economic recovery period. So the projected revenue collection for hospitality tax is around 8.4 million in 2024 compared to 7.8 in FY23. We are projecting use of fund balance around $1 million for these grants. So now the second part of this slide is, as you can see that the first one is the transfer out of this fund, which is basically there are two types of transfer out, where one is the paying for their bond interest and the principal payment, and the one part of the transfer is to the general fund in order to manage all the administrative part of the HTAX funds. Then you can see the 500,000, that's the HTAX committee recommendations. Reserve for contingencies, 150,000. Council HTAX discretionary, which is basically each district, individual district council members have discretion to make the HTAX grants throughout the fiscal year on the rolling basis. And that's altogether 906,000. And that leaves council appropriations for ordinance agencies, special promotion, and tier 3 agencies around $2.9 million there.
Abby, the transfer out, GF, I assume means general fund?
General fund, that's right.
Okay. And debt service to what?
So hospitality, we have hospitality bond, which is basically what my understanding, and maybe I will ask Director Ham also to chime in if I'm not giving enough information. But there are hospitality tax bonds which are helping which are being used to do some of the capital projects at the township auditorium, and those bonds that is the principal and interest that we use out of this tax collection. Is that correct? Yeah, and there were some other purchases. And some other additional capital purchases.
So out of the GF and debt service, how much is to each? Do we know?
The general fund is, we are recommending 3.5 million, and the rest around 1.4 million something is for the debt.
We have much longer on that? I mean, is it 5 years, 10 years?
I think it's almost. So it was a 2013 bond. So what, as per and please don't. This is not the exact.
Just approximate.
Yeah, the approximate. I think is we're pretty close to the paying it off.
Okay.
So, but we'll get back to you with the.
Couple of years left, maybe, or 3 years left, something like that. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I would.
Very close to the end. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Questions to Councilmember Adam? You recognized.
So the 3 million to the general fund, is that was approximately what happened in fiscal year 23? Is that
Yeah,
projected?
fiscal year 23 was 3 million, so this year we are just because we are collecting the higher tax as well, and we are recommending 3.5 million to the general fund.
I didn't catch the description. Why is the money going to the general fund?
Ms. Thomas?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That actually pays for general administrative expenses as well as the cost for your law enforcement and EMS and those kinds of services that support the hospitality industry when they're here in the county.
Thank you.
Any questions? All right, continue on, Mr. Deshpande.
Sure. So basically, the point here is that the last line item in the second table is basically you have 2.9 million in order to make all the different appropriations for ordinance agencies, special promotion, and the tier 3 agencies. Please, this slide basically the summary of the HTAX recommendations. Please note that the administration doesn't have any recommendations for any kind of ordinance agencies, special promotion, or tier 3 as well. So that those will come through the council motions and council actions. Any questions on this slide?
Body.
Okay.
Go on, Mr.
Perfect.
Deshpande.
This next two slides, again, basically it's just giving you the summary of all the HTAX applications and the committee recommendations for each application. Moving forward, the general fund grant request. So now, the main point here is there is no formal process for these grant requests. Basically, these are the organization they submitted the budget request ask letters to the county administrator requesting funds, county funds, general funds to support their program. And just in order to be fairness and transparency, we wanted to bring those and put those letters and ask letters in front of council to make any kind of decisions based on that. Yeah.
Mackey, you recognized?
Thank you.
Yes.
Do you know as of what date this list is current?
As of today, like means we don't have any other ask letters other than these that so far received. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, please, ma'am? Yes.
You recognize?
These organizations, requests for grants or proposals did not go out. These organizations just submitted a request to the administrator without a.
That's right. So they would.
I just wanted to,
yeah.
for those who didn't know, to clear that.
Ms. McBride. Ms. Newton?
Thank you. Mr. Deshpande, you're going to have to help me ask the question that I want to ask. As I look at this list of general fund grant requests, and you have noted with a plus sign organizations that received ARPA funds previously.
That's right.
So moving forward for this budget year, any of these requests or any funding for these requests would truly only come from the general fund. That's the only source of funding for this fiscal year. Is that correct?
That's right. So last year we had the ARPA funds available, hence, and the general funds were limited, hence these organizations funded, some of the organizations were funded using ARPA funds, but we do not have those ARPA funds available for this year.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so to look at an organization, and I'm going to pick the Lurie Center because it's the first one on my list, where it says FY 2023 award, $180,000, and then it indicates that they received ARPA funds. Is this $180,000 plus ARPA funds? Is this $180,000 including ARPA funds?
180,000 total, and the total were in ARPA funds. There were no general funds awarded to this
Perfect.
particular.
I
yeah,
just wanted
yeah.
to confirm the numbers. Thank you,
Sure.
sir.
Ms. Newton? Go on.
Sure. So moving forward, the neighborhood improvement grant recommendations. So this is basically, this is the program administered by the Community Planning and Development Department, where the county has the $500,000 neighborhood development levy, and those funds are used to make these grant recommendations. There are funding opportunities for the neighborhood organizations such as homeowners association for each district, and there are two tiers of the funding, which is the tier one, $1,500 for their project, and tier two organization, $2,500 for their project. The total amount were requested $80,103 and some change. The total amount recommended by the committee is $79,139. The detailed list of organization is on that page number 31 and 33 of the recommended budget book. Again, the recommendations come directly from the that particular grant committee. The budget or the grant staff doesn't get involved in the recommendations.
Recognize Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ali, do they have to hand in, these groups, do they have to hand in any kind of receipts, or how is the verification of the way these funds were spent? Do we know?
Yeah, so basically what my understanding about the program is it will the awardees will get the funds upfront. However, they are required to submit the grant completion report and the receipts at the end of their project, and there is a year-end report that each organization has to submit. And in general, in the grant world, that is the kind of a rule of thumb. Unless you submit the previous year's report or the current year grant report, you are basically then only you're in the good standing to receive the funds in the next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. McBride and then Mr. Branham.
I'd just like to add that this is a community discretionary, competitive grant process. So the community neighborhood associations have to submit a grant into the community development project, and they review the grants and then fund it based on those reviews.
That's right.
All right, Mr. Branham?
Abby, you said that there's a $500,000 neighborhood development levy? Is
That's
that right?
Yeah.
So that would be, a $500,000 would be equal to a lot more than the
That-
total of
yeah.
these grants. So this grant program is just a portion of
Just portion.
what the
Yeah.
levy is used for?
Exactly. I
Okay,
mean,
thank you.
they have their own personnel and all the. It's a special revenue program, and then you can see that in the just like few slides more in the special revenue side as well. So they have the personnel and operating expenditure as well.
You on, Mr. Schmant?
So moving on, Conservation Commission grant recommendations. This is kind of the similar program as the neighborhood development program, where the Conservation Commission, the $500,000 levy that Conservation Commission receives, portion of that levy is used to fund this program. So in that case, again, I mean, this program is administered by the Conservation Commission and the Community Planning and Development Department. In FY24, altogether requested amount were $228,490, and the committee recommended $178,490 for total allocations. Again, same thing, means directly this recommendation comes from the committee itself. Moving on, the county external grant requests. So these are the basically the external grant requests that the county departments try to seek from the external authorities, or such as the federal or state agencies. And some of the grants have requirements of the cash or in-kind match from the county funds. The total grant funding will be requested during FY24 is around $47,043,843. That includes all the general funded agencies as well as other funds such as the enterprise funds as well. So the possible, let's say if each and every grant application is successful, then the possible total cash or in-kind match requirement for the county will be around $14.2 million. Of that, the general fund cash match portion is $1.4 million. And the other fund cash match, which is basically the enterprise funds, that's around $12.7 million. The total general fund cash match allocation are recommended $1 million, even though it's a $1.4 million cash match requirement. Those cash match are on the federal, most of they are from the federal calendar, whereas the counties, we are from July to June. So basically, we are on the hook for only for the 9 month of that grant portion. Hence, we have not recommended 100% cash match, but just around that 66% or 70% cash match requirement for that of that 1.4, or total together $1 million.
Newton?
Thank you. Understanding that council ultimately approves the complete budget, as it relates to this category, when we are voting, is this something that will come to us with a committee recommendation, an administrator recommendation, or we're going to be expected to approve
So-
line by line?
So this would be part of the non-department funds, and it will be part of the operating general fund expenditure.
Okay, so then said a slightly different way, it'll come with an administrator recommendation.
That's right.
Thank you.
Ms. Newton? Or Mr. Deshpande?
Yeah. In terms of, so the cash match is around $1 million. The total grant funded personal liability FTE positions are for 49.5 FTEs. Totaling cost is $5.9 million. I just wanted to put that number in front of you just because it's not that the county funds are used to pay this these FTEs, but let's say tomorrow if the grants do not come to the next year, we are going to talk about this 49.5 FTE, which basically that's a personal liability on the county. So that's the only point that I wanted to convey here. Most of these positions, or most or all of these positions, are grant funded. Yeah. Moving forward, so that's where we are going to the special revenue funds now. So we have around 18 different types of special revenue funds, and basically the next 3 slides talk about the revenue part of this each special revenue fund and the revenue projection. I didn't plan to go into each and every single special revenue fund in detail, but at this point, if you have a particular question about any particular fund, I would be happy to entertain that question.
Questions from body regarding special revenue funds or a specific item related to special revenue funds? You recognize Councilman Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the one item, mass transit, 24.5 million, I assume that's from the penny tax?
That's right. So the penny tax comes under the transportation tax.
Okay.
And then there is a transfer from the transportation tax to the mass transit that goes around 28.13%.
So if I remember correctly from Charleston, we're about 36 months or so away from fully funding the penny tax. What happens when we reach statutory limit to collection? Where's the 24 million coming to keep the buses rolling? If the penny tax is not reauthorized?
I think maybe.
I guess we don't have an answer to that.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver, for not putting
That
Mr.
may be-
Deshpande on the spot.
That's another conversation.
As the budget director, that's a lot to ask.
Oh, okay,
Councilmember
sorry.
Weaver.
Okay, I'm getting too far ahead. Okay, sorry.
No,
You're
this is
not,
not-
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Today is not the venue for
Today's not
promoting
today. Okay,
another
sorry.
referendum.
I withdraw my question respectfully, Mr. Chairman.
But that conversation's around the corner at some point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Weaver.
Okay. No worries. And it's above my pay grade and the paycheck. Yeah. Any other questions?
Questions? Mr. Deshpande, I think you can move on to the
forward.
next item.
Okay, sure. And this basically, just to summarize, basically our total special revenue budget is $208 million and 689,900. So a good around similar size of our general fund budget, around similar size. This is basically just the expenditure part of the special revenue. And I'm sure you are aware, but like as a budget, like we have to, there are 2 sides, the expenditure and revenue, and there has to be balanced budget between revenue and expenditure. So that's why, hence we are giving you both sides, the revenue and the expenditure sides. The next slide talks about the new position requests received by Special Revenue and Enterprise Funds Department. So there are like total 12 positions were requested by various special revenue funds and enterprise funds. The administration has recommended 10 new positions for various special revenue and enterprise funds.
Recognize, Mr.
Thank you. Can you give, I guess, some explanation as to no recommendation for the fire code investigator one position?
Mr.
Sure, I can do that.
Brown.
The reason why is because there are a number of positions that we feel that are vacant, and that it will be more advantageous to fill those positions before we move on and adding new positions that may also not be filled, because that ties up dollars. So it's not that we're not in support of that. And then just to be clear, this is not relative to the Columbia-Richland Fire Department. This is specific to the county's internal fire service. So that's why. Not that, again, we don't support that, but we felt like right now wasn't the best time to address it because we felt there were vacancies that could be addressed internally.
Thank you.
Respond.
So the moving forward, this is the capital improvement plan. We're moving to the end. So this is the first time, at least in last 2-3 fiscal years, that the administration is recommending capital improvement plan as a part of the annual budget process. So the next 3 slides show basically the total capital improvement plan by various different funding sources, as well as by department and by project category. As you can see that, and they are like the current year, basically FY23 numbers are they are work in progress, or that particular capital has been committed to different projects. However, now going forward is that basically FY24, 25, 26, and 27. So those are the 4 years in advance that we are projecting, and we're proposing this capital improvement plan. Altogether, you can see that including the current fiscal year and next 4 fiscal year, the total we are proposing $240.5 million dollars for the capital improvement projects and throughout the county departments. One thing that I can point out here is the in this particular slide, the first line item, which is the general fund funding source, which is basically we have a capital project or capital levy of $3.5 million, 3.5 mils. And basically that the first line item will come out of that levy. And the rest are basically the various different bond funds or ARPA funds or some of the sources that we need to be determined as we move forward.
Recognize, Ms.
Thank you. Can you explain other line item for 5, 26, and 27?
Sure. So that's the plan is, so the other sources is basically there is no source, exact source is identified yet. It could be a bond fund, or it could be something else if we are not able to use the other funds, other bonds as we plan, and then we might just use the remaining funds from the other bonds. But most likely it looks like it will be a bond fund for that particular. However, we just need to make a decision on that later on.
So this is just a placeholder stating that we need it. You just haven't identified where it's coming from.
That's right.
On.
So just wanted to give like a different, slice and dicing the numbers by different categories. So the first is like, as you can see, the funding source. the second slide, the same numbers, but they slice by departments. As you can see, for example, the Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center, the total cost of the proposed capital plan is for next, including this year and the next 4 years, around $43 million. Some of the same thing about, for example, the EMS, which is the EOC, which is around $41 million. Any particular question on by department on this slide?
Questions from the body on this one?
So moving forward, the same thing, same numbers, just looking at by the project categories such as equipment, facilities, GIS or information technology excluding GIS and the vehicles. So same thing around altogether $240 million of the capital improvement plan, including this year.
Mr. Deshpande?
Yes, sir.
This question may be more appropriate for Mr. Brown, but Mr. Brown, I'm looking to see if there's anything going here that relates to the courthouse. So is that going to be part of the county's capital improvement plan long-term? Any light you wish to shed?
Sure. So I believe based off some initial conversations, even though there hasn't been an official action taken by the body, if you may recall, we actually presented with our first trion, our financial advisors, a look at what it would take as a capital project to fund a courthouse. And we looked at all of the current debt capacity that we have and the future debt capacity based off projects that we had coming down the pipeline. And the indication there was that even if the county had all of its capacity available, that you would have to do something more than just utilize your debt capacity to address that. So the priority will depend on where the body, the council, places it. We have presented that information to show you that something's going to have to be done to address it. But it is not currently in a specific itemized list of priorities. The projects that you have that you've already voted on, those are what currently represent your list of priorities that have been voted on and that you are funding. So, Mr. Chair, that would just really come as a part of any future discussions that the council has. But we as the staff have prepared information to show you kind of what you're going to need to be thinking about as you're looking at the courthouse over the next, we put in there 5 to 7 years potentially. So hopefully that's a long answer, but the answer to your question is we've shown what it looks like to do it. Now it's a decision about when you do it and what time frame you do it in.
Second question, Mr. Brown, and that is with respect to the new facility for DSS. And maybe I missed it in Mr. Deshpande's presentation, but is there anything in here that also speaks to how we're going to pay, for that facility?
That is a combination. So that's one of the other sources. One of the sources that you put towards that we're funding from the American Rescue Plan Act, and then the other source assumes that you're going to go out for bonds to address that. So both the public safety complex and the Family Services Center, the DSS, DHHS, DHEC, and some wraparound services assume a bond capacity will fund the majority of that work.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Ms. McBride?
Just to follow up.
Sure.
So when we did, I'm looking at the bonds, but it's not indicated in this presentation about the bonds that will be used, or is it?
So to answer Mr. Chair's, the second question, which I think you have the similar kind of question, which is the DSS facility, which is accounted in the 23 bond line item, which is basically around $50 million. That will, so that DSS project, the Family Service Center project is accounted in that particular line item.
Thank you. Then I saw where you had EMS, you actually had that listed in the other category for our funding. I think it's 2 slides.
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
EMS, as you can see that the total together means, the first 2 years could be, I think, I just need to go to the detailed the project list, but the first 2 looks like some equipment purchases. The construction projects are, I think, from 25, 26, and 27. And those are part here in this slide is basically the FY, the 22 bonds, which is the public safety bonds. Oh, no, they are in other sources. In other sources, sorry.
So we put the EMS in, but we didn't put the courthouse. That's what I'm trying to,
That's right. The courthouse is not accounted in these any numbers, yeah.
but we voted to put EMS in?
No, let me address that,
Okay,
Mr.
yeah,
Despandi.
I'm a
I
little
understand, right.
Okay.
So keep in mind that what you're looking at right now in terms of the recommended budget book, it's 2 components. The primary component is what does the county administrator recommend, right? The other component are information that either has been at some point in time been approved by council or a committee in some shape, form, or fashion. But when you come down to the capital improvement plan, it's a plan. Part of that plan are things that you have actually already taken action on. Other things are things that you have discussed on some substantive level and said, we want to look at this. And so that is contingent upon what the body does. The plan can move and shift based off what you said as a priority. So there has been no specific amount of funding that has been put towards the construction of an emergency management facility. And I know we've kind of had those discussions throughout the American Rescue Plan Act conversations. But what it does represent is that there has been a conversation prior that the county said, this is something that needs to be done, and we just haven't funded it. So what we're doing is we're representing you a plan so that you can consider those things as you look at whatever total priority of facility improvements that you want to invest in as a council. So some are approved actions, some are actions remaining to be addressed depending on how you choose to prioritize them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I was following it, and then the chair raised the issue regarding the courthouse, and then I saw EMS, and we discussed both of them at the same time. So that's where the confusion came in, where we identified one and not the other.
So let me provide one level of additional clarity. The reason why we showed you the capital improvement financial plan is to identify that you could not, even if you wanted to, have the capacity to address the courthouse utilizing just debt service. It will require another vehicle. So that's different from what we can show you in the plan, because the plan we can only show you as other sources or some form of debt service to address these things, which is within sort of kind of the staff's range. The other vehicle would totally really be in the range of county council's action and then any other action that citizens might support you taking.
So I'm understanding, and some you put the recommendations in, but the other one is just really not feasible at this time. One of the reasons.
It's a planning, it's a planning document,
planning.
and you have to set priorities of what you want to have happen.
Okay, so we do have the public service initiative facility and DSS, but that's part of the plan and that's included.
That is
in the
also
bonds.
correct. Yes, ma'am.
I'm good, thank you.
Monday.
That concludes my presentation, Chair.
And you finished it. Any additional questions or any discussion as far as what we heard, well, on what we heard, rather? All right, there being none, Mr. Deshpande, thank you. All right. And that leads us to item 6 on the agenda. I entertain a motion gleefully.
Motion to adjourn.
Again?
Properly seconds, non-debatable. Madam Clerk, take the vote. Oh,
Right.
Madam Clerk, you know what? I'm so sorry. We had, I know we have council members who attended virtually, and I didn't even ask if they had questions or any comments. So I guess I know it's adjournment, but
I don't mind receiving a motion if anyone has any comments.
thank you, Madam Vice Chair. If you don't mind just asking, Madam Clerk.
We, Councilwoman English and Councilwoman Barron online.
Good afternoon, Councilwoman English and Councilwoman Barron. My apologies for not acknowledging you sooner. Any questions
No,
or
listen.
comments?
Just hi and bye. Sir, I had a question.
Sure. You have the floor, Ms. Barron.
Thank you. And so I just want to make sure, I've received several emails and calls about agencies not getting emails about being able to submit the accommodation tax online or hospitality tax online. And I know that the administrator had brought before us before saying that we could address it this time. And I don't know if we've given it any thought or how we plan to proceed with those organizations that supposedly did not receive the information in order to upload it into
Barron, are you still there?
Yes, sir. Did you not? I was just saying how we plan to proceed with those organizations, or if we're planning to do anything at this point.
Mr. Brown or Mr. Deshpande?
From the programmatic perspective, like, as I mentioned that the program was only accepting online applications. So if we are looking at this from the standard process, that was the stand from the budget office to accept only the similar format of the applications rather than the paper applications. However, whatever the council decides to take that action, any recommendation will definitely take your guidance and act upon it.
Ms. Barron, does that answer your question?
It'll suffice for now.
Any additional questions or comments?
No, that's all. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. All right, well, assuming that we have no additional business, Madam
Motion
Vice
to
Chair.
adjourn.
All right. I guess
Second.
it's been gleefully seconded. Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
We are adjourned.